Christina, if you could see everybody there on the participants and mute. So again, we'll do introductions. Again, Joe Paulding, man, we can't thank you enough for coming on your vacation day, a Thursday night at 7 p.m. and coming together. We definitely have the best family in town, so just be quiet, but definitely have the best families here on Design 39 campus. That's what makes us unique. We're design thinkers and we're trying to work this through. It's great to see all your faces, over 5 pages on this one, over 100 people in the other room. Christina, you can probably wave your hand real quick. Christina, hello. And then we also have Milan. Milan, go ahead and say hello. Maybe unmute Milan.
Hi guys, how's it going?
So Milan was part of our school site council for many years and also now part of the district representation. Milan, maybe a quick introduction on what you're doing with the district.
Yeah, so I've been part of the district advisory committee now for about 3 years. And so I was invited by Carol Osborne, who's the assistant superintendent of Poway Unified School District, to sit on their reopening committee. So we are responsible for looking at the reopening plan and making any changes to it and edits and so on and so forth. So I'm here to try to get some information from the Design 39 family to see what kinds of changes we want to see or what kinds of methods we want to see implemented when our kids go back to school in the fall.
Yeah, it's fantastic, Milan. We already saw when we pushed out the Padlet wall for our families to say, hey, what are the things you're thinking about, curiosities, concerns, wonderings. One of the things was having parents decide like in the next week and to make that decision for an entire year. You saw, hopefully the district sent out another message, I think last night, saying that we're gonna reevaluate this thing come December and pivot if we need to be. So I know our district is listening and they're paying attention, especially what our design parents are talking about, because you guys are in the middle of this with us. And then we also have Casey Meter, our new collaborative parent foundation board member. Casey, maybe unmute your mic and say hello and show your face.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate you. And like Joe said, this is the best community.
So we'll get started here. Now, let me put up my little keynote here. Some of the things that we're going to be talking about today. And I appreciate your patience as I'm rusty on this Zoom thing here, right? After whatever it was, 4 weeks or 5 weeks being out. So relaunching learning, really these are the themes that I saw come across from our families. So I'm gonna start with a poll and just see where our families are. If you see the chat box in the YouTube channel, you could actually kind of put in the chat there. Christina Adamson, our LED learning experience designer, will be monitoring that. A big thing around face masks, class size, testing positive, waiting areas, OCIS, safety, cleaning, virtual learning, and then a poll again. So let me stop that. And we're going to start with just a quick poll. Obviously, only our participants in the Zoom will be able to see this poll, but we'll share the results out. So here's the poll. So if you want to go ahead and respond to it, the poll says, where are you currently landing in your decision for next year? So you would put on campus or virtual learning or still deciding. So go ahead and have about, I don't know, 10 more seconds. All right, so we're gonna end the poll there and show the results. I don't know if you can share the results, but I'll read them out to you all. So this is what it shares currently before we got started. So we had almost 95 participants. Still deciding would be 49%, so 50% are kind of in that space, kind of needing more information. On campus, we have 32% and thinking virtual learning at this point, 20%. So I'm gonna do this poll again and see if anything changes. So Casey, mark down those numbers and see if we change from there, okay? All right, so let me stop sharing that. So what I'm going to get into next is just going through the itemizing of the results that you all shared with me in this decision-making piece here. So let me close this box and share this screen now with you. Okay, so this was our Padlet wall. And in our Padlet wall, we were talking about these different areas. Questions about on-campus learning, you can see here. Questions about virtual learning, you'll see here. Other thoughts. And then I put in today a bunch of different resources that'll hopefully bring us back and like, hey, what did Joe say again? Where did that come from? So those resources are there on the right side. So what I did is I looked at your responses. You had a chance to vote up. You can see here, you could vote up or actually say, no, that's not something I'm interested in. And then I just tagged them. I put the most votes and then color coded them. There's obviously a lot more underneath this. I'm sorry that maybe got you dizzy, but at least you can see there, I'm going to try to get to the bulk of the majority of questions and thoughts. Same thing here, questions about virtual learning, and then other thoughts. So if we have time, I go to the next most interest question, and then hopefully we can add up and have some time together. So again, looking at our kind of the themes that we want to talk about real quick, again, is on these kind of things is what we'll talk about. Right up front, we had that poll, talk a lot about face masks, because I know that's there's some polarization going on with that. Class size, testing positive, waiting areas, OCIS, that's the off-campus contracts and how does that relate to our work. Safety, cleaning, virtual learning. Do a poll, but we really want to maybe open it up then to the greater families, maybe hear a little bit from Milan, and then maybe take that empathy opportunity. So this is the first phase of it, taking some empathy. I'd like to get back with you guys again next week before you have to make a decision again to see what other questions you might have, see if there's been any pivots. As you know, it seems like every 10 days, there's a new kind of reality that we're switching to. So we're doing our best learning yet. Some good news just out the gate. We started on June, I think it was 17th with our Bridge, our before school, after school program. That started their summer program. First session had about 55 kids. Second session is up to around 70 kids. And the last session is going to be around 100 kids. So I just chatted with leadership there today. So as you might have seen, they do the thermometer checks when the kids walk in, have an in and out area. More importantly is that there's been 0 kids leaving sick and 0 adults getting sick. With all those over 60 kids and plus probably 20 staff. So nobody's run ill yet. We also started the summer program for students with special needs. They have a summer program going that started on the 6th of July. And so we have some kind of in-campus experiences with how things are going and where we could pivot. So we could talk a little bit about that as well. But most importantly, it's nice to see that nobody's become ill. So let me put up another quick reference to our work here. And if you did come online, if you could just go ahead and mute your mic, and Christina, if you can help with that. Okay, let me share this. All right, so on this screen, I want to pull up one of the spaces that I've been looking at. And this comes from the American Academy of Pediatrics. And we've been looking at a lot of different results and a lot of different insights from the community, but I think this one is really pretty telling, along with another results and kind of some of maybe the backdrop for some of your decision making. And so I'm going to just highlight this first part here. So AAP, so that's American Academics of Pediatricians. And so they said there's some above principles, and basically what the above principles are is that school policies must be flexible and nimble. Right? That's number one. We have to maintain flexibility and be nimble as this comes about. And that's what's beautiful about Design 39 Campus is we're nimble. We're able to make those just-in-time decisions that are thoughtful based off of research. But the number one thing they say right here in bold, and I'm going to read a few things here to set some context, is the AAP strongly advocates that all policy considerations for the coming school year start with the goal of having students physically present in school. So I'm going to give you some of the context on why they're saying this. And this is kind of what we've experienced from March 13th through the end of the school year. When we went to distance learning, we understand that's not the full baked in version of virtual learning, but there are some things that we notice that are really tricky to do when it's a virtual and distance. The importance of in-person learning is well documented. And there's already evidence of the negative impacts on children because of school closures in the spring of 2020. Lengthy time away from school and associated interruptions of support services often result in social isolation, making it difficult for schools to identify and address important learning deficits, as well as a child and adolescent's physical and sexual abuse, substance abuse, depression, and suicidal ideation. Thus, in turn, places children and adolescents at considerable risk of morbidity and, in some cases, mortality. So considering, keep going on here, and I'm going to put this link in our reference here, but here's some of the things that are interesting for us to consider. Policymakers must also consider the mounting evidence regarding COVID-19 in children and adolescents, including the role that may play in the transmission of the infection. COVID appears to behave differently in children and adolescents than other common respiratory viruses such as influenza, on which much of the current guidance regarding school closures is based. Although children and adolescents play a major role in amplifying influenza outbreaks to date, this does not appear to be the case with COVID. Although many questions remain, the preponderance of evidence indicates that children and adolescents are less likely to be symptomatic and less likely to have severe disease resulting from COVID infection. In addition, children may be less likely to become infected and to spread infection. Policies to mitigate the spread of COVID within schools must be balanced with the known harms to children, adolescents, families, and the community by keeping children at home. So that's the tension. And that's why you saw with our original poll, the majority of folks are like feeling this dichotomy of safety and where does that fit in, and masks, and how does that all come together. So we're going to use that a little bit as a backdrop. So this link is in the report, and I'll put that at the end here. But it goes into all, talks about physical distancing. It talks about, should masks be worn or not? At what age should they be worn? Even though there is like a lot of different ideas around that. It says high priorities, low priorities. So these are things that we use as research, as backing, the science of what we know as best to our knowledge. So that's kind of some of the back end. So the first energy that we found in this question here, questions about on-campus learning, you can see that here, was about will masks be required for students? And that's the thing that's been going back and forth. The last one was the governor was debating that should masks be required? So our own governor, should masks be required? And I was going back and looking at this idea of seatbelts. So let me stop screen sharing this one and pull up this other one. I thought this was fascinating because it kind of goes back into history when other things were kind of mandated. What did we do with that? Not makes it right or wrong, but what happens when we do those? So in this particular, let me share this up. So I don't know if you know this, but when the seatbelt requirement became law in 1986, fewer than half the state's vehicles, this is in California, fewer than half the state's vehicle occupants use them on a regular basis, even though it became known that wearing a seatbelt saves your life, right? So the current research is that about 71% of people, even though seatbelts are on there, in the car, wear a seatbelt. And so even when it becomes law, it doesn't change behavior. And so that's the trick. Like we are not like the law enforcement regarding masks, right? But we know that seems like masks make a difference, especially for the person who is infected. But yet even creating a law doesn't change people's behavior. So what does that do when you come onto campus? Because it would kind of encourage us to say like, well, it seems to us that at least with the current research, and I know you can look at any research out there, that if we all wore a mask on campus, would it make a difference? Well, I think it is without a doubt, adults on campus are going to be wearing a mask, right? Now, are the kids on campus going to be required to wear a mask? My recommendation, because my bias is to have kids on campus, because that's what we do best. We learn in person. Learning is personal, it's interactive, it's about communicating in a space. It's where a teacher can touch a kid and can say, hey, come over here, can pull a small group, can work in context. But how do you do that where a family can feel safe? Well, and it's not just making sure the kids feel safe, but are adults feeling safe? And so we'll talk a few of those things that we could do specifically at Design 39, because we have a lot of spaces to open that up, because there's a lot of questions that will probably build further context. So this is encouraging data. So I'll just push this up again. So some other data for us to consider in your decision making. This is just in the county of San Diego, 3.3 million residents in all of San Diego County. So these are the recent deaths. So 0 to 9, 0 deaths, 10 to 19, 0 deaths, 20 to 29, 3 deaths. So you can see in the population of transitional kindergarten through 12th grade, there's been 0 deaths. And I think that's part of the context in terms of why the pediatricians are probably saying, well, there's something different going on, obviously, with younger kids. So with that, will masks be required for students? If you're looking at your principal, because I think the thing that's often challenging in leadership is that, can you stand for something? As you know, I have the belief that if you don't stand for something, you stand for nothing. So my belief is that, yes, you should wear a mask. It's the best evidence that we have currently. So that would be your principal's bias towards that, wearing masks. Now, do we have our kids wear seatbelts? Of course, because we know it's safe for them. Do we have them wear masks? We should. Now, if there's other things that are like limiting from that? Should they wear a face shield, or should there be some other considerations? But I think ultimately when I'm reading through the data and the empathy with what I see from our parents, is if we had everybody wear a mask, I think that would make people feel a little safer. So that's my bias. Doesn't make it right or wrong, but at least that's my opinion as your principal. And my wife and I had a debate this morning as we're going for our walk, and she says, I don't think you should be sharing your opinion. I'm like, well, I have an opinion, and I think parents want to hear it, and it doesn't make it right. It's just at least you know where I stand. So that's where I stand with that. We can open that up a little bit later, but that's around masks. What will class size be? Will students remain with one cohort all day? I think this is, when you read over the recommendations from a lot of different organizations, cohort is like the idea of keeping smaller groups of kids, be it your class sizes, which will be the same. So in K3, that is 26:1 is the ratio that we're funded at. And from what we saw from the superintendent, the class size will be the same in virtual learning classes and in on-campus classes. Now, what happens if preponderance of students now go to virtual learning? What does that do to class sizes? Well, those teachers will then have to go to virtual learning, and then class sizes will probably still maintain at that 26:1. So we've created class structures. When school got out, the teachers spent a lot of time ensuring class clusters that ensure the social emotional well-being of kids, to ensure there's the best friends together, and ensure that there's great relationships with teachers. So we've done a lot of work to ensure that that happens when our kids come back. Now, that's representative of, the bulk of our students come back to campus. We'll have to redo that, obviously, if there's a lot of students that move out. So we'll talk about, do you maintain your status at Design 39 if you go through that, because that's one of the questions. So class size will be the same, and I think it is wise that we maintain cohorts. So a big piece of Design 39 and our learner-centered focus around competency-based learning and socially embedded learning and learning in context and agency is around that ability to apply your learning in context. And we want to ensure that we can still do those project-based learning components. But do we do those cross-disciplinary? Yes. But do we do those across classrooms? Probably. We want to limit that as much as possible. So we'll be spending a lot of time thinking about how do we do that and not have kids transferring classes to classes and intermingling. I think we want to minimize that. So we could talk more about that as well. Is there a plan for what happens with the students or LEDs test positive for COVID and exposed to COVID? Yeah, this whole day about kids missing for 14 days or adults missing for 14 days. So what I've read, and I'm not in the total know on everything that's happening at the district level, but what I do see and read, and just reiterating probably some of the things you already know, is that we will do our best, from what I understand, maintaining student privacy and adult privacy, but letting people know that someone who tested positive for COVID would be identified, maybe some tracing at that point. But the idea there is to say mitigating, so that we don't have to necessarily close down the whole school, but maybe it's the classroom or how many people were infected. So that's why the cohort is super important, so that if we can minimize the number of cohorts that were interacting, then we can also minimize if someone does test positive for COVID. So that's kind of critical for us is, yes, we will notify parents under the current understanding that I have. And then from there, the big piece is, does the kid or adult need to be tested to return? Well, I haven't read that's part of the policy yet. It does seem to make sense. I know 14 days is a long time. So we'll talk a little bit more about OCIS, off-campus learning. What does that look like? Then we probably would jump right into, if that was a classroom that closed, we would jump right into distance learning at that point. Kids will not jump into the virtual learning classroom. They would maintain that cohort because that's about the relationships and building that continuity on campus. So yes, more to be discussed and discovered around when kids are out, notifying parents. I think that's important. Why are students having to choose between safety versus in-person education? I think this was interesting too, because if you go down here, there was a folks, 23 that voted up and 3 that voted down. And I think the idea here is that that's what's beautiful about our campus, if we can have positive discourse. We don't all have to technically agree, but we have to at least get our voices inside of this space to be able to have dialogue. So what this one is actually is talking about is, let me just read it. It's quite long, but I don't think that we need a decision around I don't think we need a discussion around what we want to prioritize as a community. There are basically 3 factors here: safety, value of in-class education, and comfort. Under the current models, parents are asked to choose between safety versus in-class education and comfort. Whereas if masks are mandatory, the choice would be safety and comfort versus safety and education. So it kind of goes on to that. You know, we have peanut-free tables, we have things like that. So how do we create just overall safety? And I think that's kind of one of the themes that I just bolded at the onset, is how do we ensure safety of our campus? What are the cleaning products that we're going to use? Currently, the current model that I've watched and seen with our Bridge program and our ESY program, our summer school, is that they're using a solution of bleach. Now, what's the long-term harmful effects of that, right? It's a very watered down recommended bleach to water solution that gets sprayed on the surfaces, playground surfaces, balls. I think the big piece is why the mask thing is because it keeps kids from actually touching their face and eyes. That's what I noticed mostly, is that if you have a mask on, you're not actually touching your face and kind of transmitting. So one of the things that the pediatrics is recommending is, like, instead of having doors closed, because, you know, we have the hallways, and instead of having doors closed, these high touch surfaces, instead of cleaning everything all the time, just minimizing the high touch points. So instead of having the doors always closed, open the door and have the door pivoted open. So you walk in. So things like that, because I wonder too, like how often we're cleaning things, and is that going to have some adverse effect as well? I look to the guidance of the experts in that space. But I think this is an interesting one for you to look at and kind of reflect on as well. It has to do a little bit with face coverings and kind of this, like, this tension between safety and having to make a decision for my kid. Will school start at the same time for everyone, and will there be a staggered start time and end time? Currently, no. School will start at the exact same time. So we'll be at 8, well, the bell rings at 8:30, friendships start at 8:30. Bell for getting in the classroom will be 8:45. Now, what does that look like with temperature checks and all that other kind of thing? The documentation with the pediatrics talks about the impact of learning and doing temperature checks. My child's school, they're having the parents do the temperature checks before coming to school to mitigate that, and saying if it's 100 or below, we're just going to all be in that space together. Now, if I'm walking to a classroom, I'm a classroom teacher, and I'm seeing a kid that doesn't look well, I'm going to have my thermometer and say, hey, let me just give you a quick check and see, like, hey, something's not looking right, because you can see that on our kids. We see them often enough. Right now, the current model is, though, every kid that walks in, we're going to beep, 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 and have them walk through. Will that last all the way through the first week? I'm not quite sure. If we actually had 1,200 or 1,300 kids walking through the gates, that's quite a significant impact. I do know that we'll have to limit adults' access to campus. So what does that look like when you drop your kids off and they walk into campus? You won't be walking in with your kids to start. We need to mitigate the opportunities, because it sounds like a lot of the transmission is happening from adult to adult and adult to the older adolescents, and not necessarily younger kids to adults, and vice versa. So we'll have to minimize a lot of our adult interactions. So what does that mean for staffing and supporting that? So I'm a fan, obviously, of trusting our parents and having them navigate that with us and doing the temperature checks. Current model, I believe, is 100 now. 100 are lower. Last document I saw also is 100.4. So we'll be navigating that, but the idea is same start time. What happens if a person learning, if states mandates, what happened? Oh, let me read this again. What happened with in-person learning if the state mandates another lockdown in fall? Would it change to emergency distance learning again? Yes. So if we're in school and things are moving along, and then all of a sudden there's a governmental lockdown that schools must be closed, we will pivot our on-campus learning will pivot to distance learning at that point. And then we'll put all of our energies of the teachers who are available at that time to put it back into what we've learned from last year in March, and then moving forward. The virtual learning folks will stay in the virtual learning space. If the majority of D39 chooses on-campus learning, how will you safely enforce social distancing, physical distancing? POC proposes class sizes, 6 feet separation. Yeah, if you look at the pediatrics again, the document says if you can minimize to 3 feet, which is basically our table size, and they're wearing a mask, then you're probably in pretty good space. So that's why I'm biased towards the mask, because we could also then limit to 3 feet that they feel that does the good mitigating effect. With that, obviously it's hand washing and not touching your face. Illness, along with what happens if a child or LAD contracts COVID-19 and the class being quarantined, what is going to happen with other illnesses and absences? This is really critical. I appreciate this question because it talks just about kids generally getting sick. We've had in our community agreement where there's 14 absences and we start having conversations. if there anything has to do with COVID, they're not going to count towards that absences. Now, the trick becomes like they just have a runny nose and they're cold, or they're, because the whole preponderance of evidence is that we want kids back in school. Well, then if we're keeping them out for long periods of time, how are they maintaining that status inside the campus? So this comes towards my bias, and we haven't talked this through as a staff yet. But the idea is that OCIS contracts, we don't believe are an effective tool for learning. There are busy work and there are packets of papers that we give kids on vacations. We would rather our kids go on a vacation to India or wherever they're going, and that be the learning experience. Now, that was OCIS contracts in the terms of kids taking 5 days or more off. Now, if a kid is off sick, might we look at a different methodology for getting kids engaged in the classroom if they're picking on-campus classroom experiences? My hunch is that we could utilize a digital kind of version of that. And how can we use a Zoom session inside the classroom and or connect the dots with the kids who are in the classroom, and to bring the kid into the classroom when they're having to be at home? So I think thinking around those ideas of being able to bring a kid into the classroom when they're out sick. And we've seen kids do that, and our own staff do that when kids are out for longer periods of time for a surgery, or they broke a leg or whatnot. And we've seen positive evidence of that actually working, the kids feeling connected to the classroom, and it's not going to be through an OCIS packet. So I'm biased against that. I don't think it's a good plan for learning. If you're on campus, we need to figure out a way to connect you back to campus. If you have the sniffles or you have to be at home, and there's this tension to keeping people home longer than maybe they need to, just for preponderance of caution and safety. All right, so there's more down here about questions about on-campus learning. So I'm going to move over to this blue section here, and then I'll put this link so you guys can see this all again, but you had this in the original. Let's go questions about virtual learning. So if you have questions, you could pop them into the chat box. We have Casey, Meteor, and Christina looking at that. So I believe the YouTube link has some chat spaces for that, and then also the chat box here. So we'll monitor the chat as we go along.
We've got Joe, sorry, we've gotten a bunch of questions already on some topics we've covered. Do you want to address them now or at the end?
Yeah, that might make sense to keep it in context. Let me stop sharing them, and so I can see the chat. Casey, did you see anything that maybe a theme that I can go to right away, or do you want me to go through?
Well, masks in general. But someone asked, will we know whether masks will be mandated before we have to make a decision?
I don't have that answer. I'd be making it up. It's coming from the governor, and also they're giving the local education, so basically districts, some autonomy to make those decisions. So all we can go off of is what's currently been reported to us by the district, which is staff, yes. Strongly encouraged for kids, yes. Okay. What else?
There was one in the beginning regarding the current happenings on campus right now where there's been no illness. They also wanted to know if there had been any cases amongst family members of the students that are on campus right now.
Say that last part.
They wanted to know, we realize that there are no COVID cases currently with any of the students on campus, but have any of the family members of any of the students on campus been positive for COVID while the school's been open?
Not in my conversation today, not that's been reported to me.
Okay.
And I was just talking with Rosella, who's the director of our Bridge ESS program. So not that she was aware of today.
Okay. And then someone else asked, it's going to be really hard dropping off a TCARE and not walking them into the classroom. Is there going to be an alternate solution or something else that will make that transition a little bit easier for the younger students?
Completely agree. I remember dropping off my son, Christopher, my oldest now, who's a second year at UCSD. And like, what am I doing dropping him off? It's like, this is your lifeblood. So yeah, the humanity of like that interaction. How might we also create those homeroom experiences earlier before school starts? Maybe there's some options there. We've done play dates and K1 play dates prior that we've had through the support of our collaborative. So opportunities for that, so there can be some earlier connections. But then also, how do we do that so there's an easier meet and greet and exchange? So keep that one down as a to-do for us. Yep, good point.
Sorry, a bunch just came in. Let's see, there was an offer of parents to help with temperature checks. And
I think, I'm sure we'll need the help. I think we'll just, as long as we have a process and a protocol, Kind of some questions again, all around the mask, right, Casey?
Yeah.
Why can't we require it as a school site? That's the piece. We are still one of 39 schools, and while I might have a bias towards it, I still am an administrator within Poway Unified. So, yeah.
And someone else wanted to know whether we will know LED allocation before making a decision.
Yeah, that's going to come up, I think, in the next 2 sections. So we'll talk about that.
Okay. And will there be 6 feet social distancing while drop off and pick up?
I think we're going to do our best with physical distancing. As you know, I'm down there at the K2 drop off in the morning for the last year. Just the cadence of the way the cars come in, there's pretty much that anyways, the way the cars come in. Now the difference will be once they get into the campus, what happens? Do they go right into the campus area, into their classroom? Because as you know, our teachers' current model are in collaborative experiences from 7:45 to 8:45 every day. So it'd be that last 15 minutes, 8:30 to 8:45. So there'll probably need to be some adjustments.
Okay. And then she clarified among parents while they're waiting. I think that's probably up to the parents to social distance.
Yeah, I think that's the current requirement. I mean, per county, like when you walk into all the stores around Forest Ranch, I see placards, I see, things in terms of how you should wear a mask even for the kids should be wearing a mask when they enter the place of residence there.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of questions. Daily. Sorry, there's a bunch of questions about the hybrid schedule. I think we're going to get to that later, if I remember.
Yeah, correctly. I could talk a little bit about that. And what I'll do as well, it seems that there's a lot of great questions here that we could just add to this document, this Padlet wall, and then I could probably put some responses to it, and then that way it's there for everybody to refresh. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. So just kind of keep thinking about those themes, Casey and Christina. Anything you see on the YouTube chat?
I'm furiously copying and pasting, so it's all on the chat already. So
okay. So if you see something that's unique, Christina, as a theme, if you could bring it out in the next section.
Sure.
Okay. Let me move on to the next section, which is virtual learning and a decision to be around that. So let me pop that open. We're at 7:30, so I think we're doing pretty good. I want to make sure we save some space at the end for parents here. All right, this one, I thank you. I think there's 66 here that had to do with it and 59 vote ups for this. So will Design 39 have its own learning, virtual learning experience, or will Poway have a distance learning groups into distance learning program? It sounds, there's preponderance of evidence that you guys would love us to have our own virtual learning experience. The current reality is no. So what I've been shared with me is that they'll be by geography. So you'll take the 92127 schools, just for instance, Del Sur, Design 39, Monterey Ridge, Willow Grove, and you look at the cluster of kids and how many are in those first grade classes, how many teachers will you need, and that becomes the virtual learning academy. And they will be their own school. So you need to consider it that way. So it won't be a Design 39 campus virtual learning. It'll be a virtual learning kind of subset run by Poway Unified. Depending on how many, they might have their own assistant principal that runs it, or they have their own site leadership, or however that runs. They'll have their own culture. All right, so that needs to be pretty evident for you all that it won't be a Design 39, the current model. And this is maybe something Milan can take back to the district with maybe some other feedback, because Milan, you can see there's 66 people are talking about it, another 60 here are talking about it. So we could talk more about that, but the bottom line is we're going to be focusing on our school site about doing the best version of on-campus learning. And the virtual learning piece will be surveys going out to the teachers. Christina is at next week asking if you want to be a virtual learning teacher or not, I think next week or the week after. So we don't even know which teachers are interested in that yet, but I can talk to you through how they're making that sorting decision in terms of selecting teachers from the district pool, so probably 1,600 teachers. How do you now select for that virtual learning academy? And how do you create a virtual learning academy with those teachers? Okay, the email indicates that we select virtual learning option for D39 children. Could be in virtual classes led by teachers from different elementary schools for the year. That is correct. So you can see another 60 saying, can we have our own virtual learning? Who will teach the Virtual Learning Academy? So this is probably a good time to show that. In the resources document over here, I have that pediatrics thing there. There was a summer school video, the relaunching frequently asked questions, PUSD teacher selection. So this is from the teachers. So the teachers, so I'm going to click that. So can you still see my screen there, Christina? So this is questions that our teachers, not our teachers, Poway Unified teachers have that went back to the Poway Federation of Teachers, which is the teachers union, and they were asking these questions back. So I'm just going to give you straight from what they're saying. So how will teachers be selected? So let me go down to that question. I think it's down here. All right. How will virtual learning teachers be selected? The state COVID industry guidance, schools and school-based program state. Support staff at higher risk for severe illness or who cannot safely distance from household contacts at higher risk by providing options such as telework or virtual learning. Qualifying teachers seeking a reasonable accommodation under ADA will be considered first for virtual teaching assignments whenever possible and within credentialing parameters. Other teachers wishing to teach in the Virtual Learning Academy will have second priority. So it goes on to talk a little bit about that. So that's how they're going to go selecting. Oops, where am I now? Oof, too many tabs open, friends. Sorry. Need to get back to my pre-share. Is this it? Oh. Must be back here. I don't know what I did with my Padlet wall. So Christina, let's, if there's any questions about that, I just lost my Padlet question somewhere. So let me try to find that. Other questions, Casey? And as
I have a few questions that I picked out. One parent wanted to know whether parents will be able to volunteer on campus this year.
Yeah, the question, no, at first. That's gonna be pretty locked down to just personnel who are required to do the critical care.
There seems to be a lot of concern about what the process will be if someone tests positive for COVID, whether they'll need a follow-up test to show that they're negative, when can they return back to school? Yeah,
I read, and I can be corrected, I read that they will not be required to have a COVID test follow-up. They will have to be 14 days quarantine, so 3 days fever-free is how I read it.
Okay. And then there was another question that said, if we opt out of all our options through Poway Unified, can we homeschool this year and still save our spot at D39?
Yes, there is a homeschooling link in the resources, and actually if you click on the homeschooling resources, it is a K-8 option, and there's requirements for parents because all the homeschooling is done by the parent. Now, yes, Joe and team will ensure that you maintain your status at Design 39.
And then one more, how will GATE students be handled if they choose virtual learning?
Yeah, so GATE identification, we do 2nd through, I think, 8th grade. And then we have our students all intermixed within the classrooms. So we don't have a GATE cluster at Design 39. So the question again is?
It was specific to GATE, but I've also heard from other people whose kids are in like advanced math classes. They want to know what will happen. Yeah, for the GATE, it'll just they're intermixed within all the other classrooms, so there won't be a GATE cluster across PUSD. In terms of like 6-7 compacted math that Abby Cavendish teaches here at Design 39, and then there's the Kyle Osmus up that pathway. I would imagine the district is going to have to figure that out at the middle school level, and if there are enough kids in that cohort to run that through. Yeah, I don't know exactly how that will be facilitated. It's quite fascinating how they're even going to do all those different AP classes and whatnot at high school. It gets super complex. So I found my tab.
I was getting lost in my tabs. All right, so good. So let me go on, Casey, then to the next one, because that was who will teach the virtual mid-year options. You saw that the superintendent sent back that we're going to re-audit in December because it looked pretty rigid for parents to have to decide in the next week or two and then have to be stuck with that decision. So as you saw from the American Pediatrics, that makes sense with what they're sharing as well, that we have to be able to pivot, be nimble and agile. So the current district model is their agility is in December. When will we know which LEDs will teach the virtual academy? Okay, I don't even know which of our own teachers are interested in that. When I did the audit at the end of the year, I can tell you that it was quite draining and tiring and not as fulfilling as having those kids in the campus with you and getting that reciprocal energy back. I don't know how many of our teachers would actually sign up for it. Christina, do you have a better concept of how many teachers are actually thinking about it? I mean, I haven't asked as directly, but when I was taking a pulse check, our teachers signed up for Design 39 because they wanted to be on campus.
I don't have a specific pulse check. I think it's multi-nuanced. There are
Yeah.
teachers that are high risk that have maybe not shared that. There are teachers that have family members that are high risk. So I think
Right.
a lot of that, in honesty, we're waiting for the union to see what safety looks like for us. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, kids aren't getting sick, but adults do pretty significantly. How many hours a day will Zoom and distance learning require? It's pretty significant. So if you look at the resources on the bottom here, I put in the virtual learning framework right here and the virtual learning example. And in those two, it shares the length of it from 45 minutes to 4 hours worth, depending. So it's a significant amount of time on a digital screen. It's virtual. Yeah. All right. That's the feedback that we all got, though, is that parents wanted more kind of one-on-one and more time with Zoom and more time with direct lessons and more time of those experiences. So that's all being built off of the feedback from the parents and a little bit from the students as well. If my child is enrolled in virtual learning, will they keep their post? Yep. Are their spot? Yes. Can we try to create our own D39 virtual learning academy? There you go, Milan. Are we guaranteed a D39 LED for virtual learning? No, you are not. I don't know how they're going to sort kids or put them into clusters. I would imagine it would make sense to say that there's a cluster of kids from each campus if I were leading that work, because then they already have a semi-culture. At least to get going, because what we know about what's most needed when kids come back for those early days and what's needed for the adults is to kind of unpack what happened from March 13th to the end of the year. And having a trusted adult to do that with is going to be quite critical. All right, questions about virtual learning and that space, either Christina or Casey?
There's still been some discussion about your spot at D39. Some parents wanted to know if they chose a whole nother option. I think none of the options we've talked about, whether they could still have a spot at D39 the following.
Yeah, if you unenroll, like if you're not in a Poway Unified program, so if you're not in virtual learning or if you're not in the homeschool program, if you went to a private school or another charter school, then you're unenrolling in Poway, then we wouldn't be able to keep your spot. But if you're within the Poway Unified process, then it would be okay. I would imagine we could do that. Yeah, it would be too hard to maintain that status if you're not within at least Poway Unified. And that might feel kind of crappy, sorry.
Another question about the homeschool program. A lot of parents have given feedback that it's full. Is there plans to open that up or add more teachers so that we can create more space for
All right, Milan, that's a good one for you to take back. So you heard that. So Milan will take that back to
I did
Carol.
hear Joe. I'll take that back.
Okay, thank you.
I didn't realize that the homeschooling option was actually full. All our talks at district level have been that that's still an option for parents. So I will get clarification on that.
Thank you, Milan. Again, Milan is one of our trusted parents, been with us since the opening, and now is a trusted adult with the district as well. So thanks, Milan, for representing D39 with empathy.
Joe, there was a question
Uh,
I didn't get to copy yet
okay.
about, has there been any talks of ventilation filter upgrades? Will windows, our windows don't open. Will windows be open for fresh air? Will classroom doors be open?
Yeah, I believe the piece for that, number one, is around minimizing high touch points. So if your doors are open, that does one thing is the kids aren't touching the doors often, right? So you're minimizing the amount of times they're touching those pieces. The other one is that we know that ventilation in open air is really critical. We're blessed to have a lot of open spaces. We can't keep doors open. We've been told by district that I know they change our filters regularly. We have, I think there's like one for every 2 classrooms, air conditioning units on our roof. Versus having one central plant that some campuses have. So we have basically a conditioner for 1 or 2 rooms each that gets changed. There's also electrostatic machine that they purchase for every site. So there'll be this electrostatic machine that will go through all the classrooms to sanitize it. And then we're having hand sanitizer stations at all the halls and areas. So kind of the electric ones that kids can do. So there's a variety of different things that this district is putting and providing. From air filters to open doors to ventilation to electrostatic machines and hand sanitizers.
Sorry, and if you said this already and I missed it, sorry, multitasking. If you choose virtual and then switch, how will the school determine placement in a class?
Yeah, it's a great question. And Christina, have you think about that for a second, empathetically. If you had a friend in a 1-2 classroom coming back and you had them in your class originally, would make sense that you would have them back in that class because you either knew them already or you had some relationship with them. Is that your understanding and how you would address that or give feedback to us? What would you do?
Seems most logical.
Mhm.
It would, obviously when the switch occurs, there'd have to be, cultural building and different things occurring, kind of a restart of such. Because when you add into a space, if it was, for example, in the 1-2, if it was new first graders coming into my space, I don't know them. So there would have to be like a restart of sorts in January, but there always is anyway.
Yeah, we've kind of talked about this a lot as we built this culture of the last 100 years that my homeroom is my homeroom forever, right? And we don't change it. Well, if you look at the culture in our 6-8, we balance mid-year. So our 6-8 middle school at Design 39, they relook at how's it going academically for kids, how's it going in the social emotional well-being for our kids, are there behavioral impacts that are happening with friends, and they resort their classes. So we have this mindset though, kind of historically, is that you get in the classroom and that's your teacher for the rest of the year. But if we have this culture that we belong with all kids and all kids are ours and we can resort and refresh. And we've kind of been talking about that with our K-3 redesign as well, is how do we continue to re-audit. We do that with our week of welcome with kindergarten. We look at all the kids and we bring them in and we say, what's the best fit? And so I think we're well suited to be able to adapt to that January, December time. Okay, good question. Should I move on to the next column?
Sure.
Okay, so other thoughts, some great thoughts. 51 here, folks, for loading this up. Even if the district isn't implementing a hybrid approach, can D39, being an innovative school, create its own hybrid model? Well, I want you to know that we actually talked about that before school got out. We had a group of us, we worked with the D schools at Stanford, and we started thinking about what might a hybrid model look like. I was part of the early design team with the district looking at hybrid models, and cabinet and team made a decision that they felt that for the collective of 37,000 kids, they were going to go with 2 models. A 1-year virtual learning commitment is long, so we already talked about that. So we're going to making a split there. Yeah, the hybrid approach. Superintendent's going to be putting out more information around why there's not moving forward with a hybrid approach. Interesting, in my kid's school, he's a high schooler, he'll be a junior. I don't talk much about Tristan, but I usually talk about Christopher, but Tristan, he's going to be a junior, and they're doing a kind of a hybrid where it's one day, Monday, they'll have all their classes, but they'll be online. And then they're in a block schedule on the other 2 days. So they'll have 2 days with 3 of their classes. I say Monday, so Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Thursday, Friday is the other 3 classes. But on Monday is virtual for all their classes. And then that day they bring just the freshmen onto campus. And so they're looking at different models there. And I think that's appreciated from a parent perspective, is that, having that flexibility. So I know, Milan, that's the feedback you'll probably continue to hear, is that there's never gonna be a model that fits for everybody. What I know as your principal is tell me what we're going to design for, and we'll do the best that we can with that. So if you're telling me that we're going to be the at-school experience, I'm going to tell you it's going to be one of the best at-school experiences in all of PUSD. Yeah, again, if it's not a good fit for your kid, even if it's not a good fit to get going, so say you chose, at school or whatnot, and things changed for you, or conditions changed for you, and you had elders that were getting sick or whatnot, we would want to pivot for you and put you into that virtual learning experience, even if it's not December. So there, I would imagine there's still going to be that case-by-case basis. To say that, sorry, good luck, we'll see you in December, is probably not going to be adaptable enough. We're going to need to be able to have that empathy and that heart-to-heart to say, what is it that you really need to do our best work? Because we're talking about learning. It's the greatest gift we can give our kids. So we want to ensure that our kids aren't at a detriment because of the decision you made in July. Have our LEDs been asked, what is the preference? That's happening, Christina, I believe in a couple of weeks, right? And then I'll have a better sense of that, because as Christina shared, I don't know all of their conditions in terms of what they have at home and what they're having to navigate as well. Independent study option, is there New Directions, independent study, homeschool? Yeah. So if you come down here onto the resources, I put down on the bottom PUSD homeschool, and that'll take you there. So the big red picture. I'll give you this link again. So they'll have that on the resources. And Milan's going to be checking to make sure there's more spots if that's a parent option. Okay, questions now. And I think we're at 51. So I'm going to stop with the color-coded ones here and stop sharing, and then open it up to our wonderful families who came in today. All right, so we have at least 9 minutes. So we're going to get off the chat and get into humanity here and look at your beautiful faces. So either raise your hand or just be bold and unmute yourself and ask the question. And I'll make it up. No, I'm kidding. All right, right there. Sujan, do you have a question?
Hey, I know PUSD talked about the switch option in December, January, but if you start with a homeschooling option, can a switch still be made in the December, January timeframe?
According to this principle, yes. I think that's great guidance to get back. Milan, another question to take back: if they're in the homeschool option, not in the virtual learning option, could they switch back to Design 39 or their homeschool at that point? So Milan's going to get us that question back. Okay, yes.
So a lot of the concern.
And you have to introduce yourself. You have to say who you are. And
I'm Becky Martin. My kids are going to be going into kindergarten this upcoming.
Welcome, Becky.
Thank you. So I feel like a lot of the concern is whether or not masks are going to be enforced. And I know the answer can't be answered yet, because it just depends on what happens during that time. But I'm curious, if masks are going to be optional, would it be impossible to maybe suggest those who don't want to wear masks, and they all have the right to not wear a mask, be in a separate classroom than those who do wear masks? And the question about segregation, I mean, we're segregating anyway between virtual and in class, but this segregation is not, it's more of a health issue, because there's some people that have elderly people at home that they can't even risk having to expose them to these viruses. Others, they have no choice but to put their kids in school because they're single parents. So this way it kind of appeases both sides of the issue without making it political or in any way. Is that maybe an option that could be?
Yeah, interesting. I don't have a quick answer for that, other than I was thinking in my head, Christina, if you could write that down, and Milan, you'll have that as a take back too, is, all the school sites are thinking about how to do configurations. We don't even know what our numbers are yet until you guys do the final poll. And then from there, would there be an option to say, hey, where are you on that side of the fence in terms of wearing a mask or not? And based off of what guidance we have at that point, is it going to be mandatory or not? So we'll take that back as a suggestion.
Okay, thank you.
Next, be bold and introduce yourself and ask the question.
Hi, Joe. This is Stephanie Bradshaw.
Hey, Stephanie. Sorry, I was bailing on you on your email there. So
You're okay.
I'm glad you joined in today.
Thanks. We have our 3 younger boys are going to be in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade this year. So anyways, I'm just wondering if A negative COVID test is not required to return to school after someone goes home with some COVID symptoms. Then how will the district and the school follow through with their commitment to make parents aware of cases on campus and also to inform people who have been exposed if they have no way of knowing if people actually had it or not?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'm also reading the same documents you're probably reading as well. And the way I'm reading it is that when a person has a COVID test, they're not required to have a follow-up COVID test. Now, are they required to have a COVID, like is every kid that goes home sick or the adult that goes sick with symptoms required to take the test? Currently, I'm not reading that that's a requirement, right? So what does that mean for you and your feeling of safety for your 3 boys in middle school? I don't know. What I do feel is that what I've seen on campus right now, and it's a little bit different between Bridge, like the before school, after school program, and the kids in our ESY program. I'm noticing the kids in our summer school ESY program are wearing either face shields or masks almost, and I can't say 100% of the time, but preponderance of the time. Whereas, about 50-50 when it comes to the Bridge kids. Now, all the adults are wearing them, but it's interesting, right, that our kids with special needs are all wearing them, yet the ones with not are not. So I don't know how that plays out, but ultimately I would imagine that our middle school kids would probably be more apt to wear them. I don't know. There's another question there about shaming and blaming people, like this whole thing around if you're wearing a mask or if you're not wearing a mask. I even feel like, I better put on my mask because I'm walking down the street. Should I put it on? Right. So this whole sense of like, what does that feel like? Because if I'm just walking on the sidewalk with my wife, I'm not wearing a mask, getting exercise. But when I walk into a store, I do. So I'm not answering your question other than to say that when it comes to COVID testing, I think we need some more information around is it required if you're asymptomatic or symptomatic rather. So thanks. We're taking that down.
Hey, Joe. Oh,
yes,
sorry.
hi.
Hi, this is Susan, and I'm a new family. My son will be
Welcome.
going into 5th grade. And I see with the other questions, could you talk more with what you do know about recess and PE and art programs and things like that? Some of the other things that keep school interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what does keep school interesting, is doing those hands-on projects and learning. So I just had a conversation with Tiffany Spencer, our music specialist. So we're talking about what does music look like and even expanding our music experience. So we've been talking about how do we, maybe that's probably the highlight of our 39 Days of Giving is expanding our music program, maybe even bringing on another person to support that work. Physical education, we call it MIM, Minds in Motion, will continue. We feel that we can separate our kids fairly well physically because we have 3 staff members. We have huge spaces outdoors to be able to navigate the physical distance for that. When it comes to like the project-based learning and the experiences on campus, there probably won't be as much like interactions between, probably maintain cohorts of kids. So we can minimize interactions there, but they'll still be doing those processes. Recess, currently I can just share with you what they're doing with recess with the summer school program is they're doing in like 10-minute blocks with cohorts of kids. And so the kids go into the playground, then it's sanitize that particular area, and then they wait, and then the next cohort of kids come. Currently, we have 4 different lunch periods already. So we'll look at that. We have spaces in our showcase, on our picnic tables, and then also in our grass area. So I think we feel we have enough spaces to do that and recess and those typical things. So did I touch those? Okay. All right, next up.
Hey, Joe.
Yes. Hey.
Hi. This is Robert and Jill Townsend. Hello.
Good to see you guys.
You too.
Yeah.
I hope I don't re-ask a question that's already been answered. I have 2 questions. One is, do you have a specific plan for the sorting? Chase is going to be a kindergartner this year. So is there a specific new sorting plan? Because that's such one of the appealing things of the way that you structure your kindergarten classes is that sorting process. And I'm hopeful that you have a plan of attack for that. And then also, if we do the online version, I didn't see if you said how long they're required to be on Zoom, but a kindergartner on Zoom, we did that with preschool last year and it was a little like, no bueno, right? So don't know
Yeah.
what that looks like either.
Yeah, and I agree when it comes to virtual learning. So maybe I'll show a picture, a personal picture. Yes, so there's still a commitment to do the week of welcome for kindergarten, so we can do the sorting, and so part of that is so they can get to know the teachers. So probably what will happen is the kids will stay in the same space, but the teacher would move. That's one of the recommendations too, is you don't move the kids as much, you move the teacher. And so that would probably be one of the recommendations with our 5 kindergarten teachers plus TK. And so yes, continue that week of welcome, because we found over the last 2 years that's really been beneficial to creating balanced classrooms.
Great.
And then they know all the teachers, which is fantastic. When it comes to virtual learning, I completely agree. So I'm going to show you a picture, if I may, real quickly, of my kid. So this is him today. So remember, he's going into his sophomore year. So he's taking an online course on his own. So on the left is his computer programming class, or is the coding that he's doing. In the middle is his reference of what he's created. On the right is the reference video. Now, if you have to scale back, what happened for him to be able to do this? So to put a kid right away into virtual learning, I think would be an epic failure. So you have to go back to what happened for his experience back in kindergarten and first grade and in second grade for him to be an independent student filled with agency. Agency doesn't come like this because you go ahead and put a kid on a computer. They might be very myopic in the thing that they're interested in, but they won't spread their wings in terms of all the other experiences. So Tristan, I don't usually talk about him, but Tristan in first grade was in a resource program until 6th grade. So had really trouble with reading. And so all the way up to where now he's like doing his own programming and creating his own game. And now he's off to learning how to create multiplayer games. That didn't happen because we put him in a virtual learning experience, because we had high touch experiences with him, with loving and trusting adults, for him to have that experience. And so that's what I'm talking about when, like, for a kindergarten kid to go into a virtual learning experience, you're going to miss a lot of experiences when it comes to those high touch points that only a teacher can do in that space, in the context of that classroom. So yes, for a 6th grader, probably maybe a 4th grader, stretch it, but below that, man, not my kid. And that's my opinion.
I mean, I'm still terrified, but I appreciate that insight. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And so that's what I'm talking about when, like, for a kindergarten kid, okay, the virtual learning experience, you're gonna hey, good to see you. So you're on, you don't look like Rosa. I'm just saying.
What's that?
You don't look like a Rosa, but I'm
yeah, sorry. So my 2 daughters go there, and we love it. But it's a 2-point question. One, which is, are you using just the positive numbers to base decisions from your level and your colleagues, or are you usually utilizing the R0 number? Because they're 2 very different things for decision making. And then secondly, what protections are you giving teachers? Some other districts and some out-of-state places are paying for masks, they're prepaying for tests, doing other things. So those are my 2 questions.
Yeah, the first one the second part of your question, PUSD and really state is giving masks to every adult. So currently on site, they have PUSD masks that were provided for all of our summer staff right now. And face shields. So a face shield for those who actually need that for like phonemic instruction or speech therapy, or those who are working in those critical spaces with kids that need to see expression. So face shields are being offered. And then
plastic dividers by chance?
Yes, not probably in those really close proximity spaces, mostly in the special ed spaces where you're doing really close proximity instruction, speech therapy where you're doing that. There'll be some dividers at the Welcome Center and some other plexiglass spaces. So that's the current kind of best version of what they're offering to start for protections for adults. And that's why Christina was talking about working through the union and what are they able to offer for support. And the other one, can you help me unpack that a little bit more for myself and for our listeners?
As far as the numbers that you hear on the news are just the positive cases of tests coming back. The R0 number is utilizing the science behind and is the algorithm to figure out the XY curve for COVID itself. We use it for research for other medical items. I'm sure a scientist can define it much.
Yeah. I think we're only using positives right now, from what I've seen. Yeah. And I just got a text that said, "Nope, we're not doing that." Okay.
Yes, I had a question. Yeah. So
yes,
I heard you passing along many suggestions and questions to Milan Patel. When can we expect him and his team to come back with some kind of policy proposal?
Yes. So thank you for that. That was the next opportunity for us to get back prior to you making your decision, so we could hear back again, probably a little bit more specifically from Milan, because he's in the know more than I am. And what can he hear? I'll put some responses that I get from. We have our next district meeting on my vacation day next Thursday, and we're having a kind of a optional principals meeting next Thursday. So we'll put something together like this in the coming weeks. And then Milan, can you again say hello and what we might be able to expect from you? Because I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah, no, that's great. So my focus on the reopening committee for PUSD is basically just to gather information and questions from our community, and then bring that over to the district administration. So more specifically, I work with Carol Osborne, who's the head of the reopening committee at Poway Unified School District. So I'm shooting emails to them back and forth on a daily basis. Sometimes I hear back the same day. Sometimes I don't hear for a few days, but they're very responsive. And boy, are they working really hard on this plan. So this is all great information. That's why Joe asked me to be on this Zoom call. It's just to kind of get an idea of what Design 39 parents are really looking for. And as a Design 39 parent, I've been here since my kid was in preschool. And this is really important for me personally as well. So I'd say, as I get questions or answers back, I'm just going to forward them to Joe. And then Joe, you can disperse them however you feel is best.
Perfect. Thank you. So we'll do another follow-up meeting, and then we'll post this on this Padlet wall that I've been sharing with you. Speaking of that, Christina, if you'd be so kind to push it into the YouTube chat as well, just so folks have that link. And if you guys have your chat box open, I will send it to all here. All right, we're at 8:07. We'll take, I just put that in the chat, the link to this Padlet wall that we were talking about, and that has the resources in there. Christina, Casey, anything that you saw as a theme? Because I have not been able to keep up with the chat.
Hang on, give me a second.
There was some talk about whether we could use some of our outdoor space for classrooms.
Yes, Stacy Lamb was talking about that, and Barbara, she loves to do different things up there in the loft. And the gallery, we just had the gallery redesigned, so it has a really beautiful projection system in it now, so we could have that as another space. We have our collaborative spaces that are wonderful. We have double rooms, and then the outdoor learning that we have down there at the pavilion and promenade. So, yep. I know our teachers will want to have as much open air as possible. We're lucky to be in San Diego. I think that's kind of one of the mitigating effects, is that, we're not living like in New York where we're cramming in on subways. The viral load could potentially be less because we're not so impacted by population. All right, other question?
There were a couple questions on, I just couldn't type fast enough. For in-campus learning, what happens if the statewide shutdown is ordered? Which program do the kids join?
Yeah, if it's an emergency, Christina, correct. Thank you for that question. So virtual learning kids will stay in virtual learning. On-campus kids will stay with their on-campus teacher in a distance learning program that we will develop for them. So emergency shutdown, they will maintain their homeroom classroom teacher.
Will that look like what it looked like at the end of last year, or will it look different?
Yeah, with improved access to things that we learned that we had to pivot so quickly. Yes, I know Christina could probably speak to that a little bit, but the idea, we learned a lot, as did our parents, and the impact that has on our parents, because if we're shutting down, that means you're having to do a lot of work. And so, we require a lot of support from our parents starting in March 13th to the end of the school year. So we'll be learning and probably looking at some of the things that they had from the Virtual Learning Academy. What did they learn and lessons learned from that? And probably taking some of their documentation and move that forward pretty quickly.
There was another question about, will we know class placement before we have to make a decision?
No. Casey, anything on your end?
Yeah, there's another question about masks, whether they're going to be encouraged during physical activity like MIM and recess.
Say that one more time, Casey, sorry.
So since we're encouraging students to wear masks, will they be encouraged during MIM and recess in times when they're physically active to wear masks?
I don't think so. I think I don't think so. I think the process would be to physically distance kids for those activities and then allow them to get some fresh air.
And then there was another question about staying connected to the school if a student chooses virtual learning.
Yeah, I know district is interested in this when it comes to like music and other experiences, because it's really challenging to offer those enrichment elective type classes outside of school. Obviously lunches, students will, I guess, come to be able to pick up lunches on campus is what I understand. But you know, what other enrichment activities can we offer that they can stay connected? Because that's the critical bit to this whole thing is you talk to your kid, what do they want? They want to socialize. The middle school kids especially, they're defining themselves in the middle school era, right? They're not defining it by being at home. They're defining it by interacting with their peers. And it's really tricky to do that and read facial expressions and understand context on a Zoom call. So we have to create those spaces and experiences. And I think the collaborative will be up for the opportunities of figuring this out. Some of the things we're talking about too is can we create just some of these conversations? So when we do announce homeroom LEDs, can we have a homeroom LED Zoom call before we get started? And I don't know. But I think more critically, the question sounds like Casey is how do we connect folks who chose virtual learning? And I guess my recommendation would be, how might virtual learning create culture for that particular campus? So you have to think of it as their own campus, and they're defining their own learning experiences, and they're trying to create their own kind of heartbeat.
Sure, quick question.
There were a couple more. Sorry.
Let's just take a quick one. Yeah, from, was that Sai? Was that you?
Yeah. Yeah, this is Sai Kiran here. I have a fifth grader going in and a first grader. And again, so since the beginning, no matter how some other community of parents have interacted about how the Design 39 experience is different, I'm always a pro. That's why I'm here. I'm still continue to support that thought process, right? That love of learning. And now I'm being challenged at this moment because I am very well concerned about sending my kids to school just because of the asymptomatic spread and how things are going. I do agree with whatever the numbers you showed about kindergarten kids are the deaths and impacts are low. But I feel like looking around the news and what's happening in some of the communities that I have personally witnessed, and there are people who are impacted personally at different age groups, even the lowest, like 2-year-old, they had it. It's just that by the time that information trickles up the stream to the politicians and the governments, and by the time it becomes a policy and comes through the school, the whole cycle is big, right? So all of that makes me concerned to send my kids to on-campus facility. Now, if I were to choose virtual, the biggest challenge that I'm going to run into is I gave them an opportunity where they can experience this whole love of learning through Design 39. Now they're going to lose that. They're going to go back into the whole homework and all of those things that we never wanted to have for our kids. And I'm like forcing myself and my family, kids, into a different mode of learning, right? So that's really challenging thought process. How am I going to do that without having the Design 39 experience and still be virtual?
Authentic. I appreciate that. That's what I feel a lot of parents are thinking as well, is feeling forced into compromising safety for a learning experience. Ishita, did you have a question? I see
Yeah,
that coming through here.
My question was also about style of teaching, especially since you have, if you go by the virtual route, again, my daughter is moving to first grade. And if we take the route of virtual learning, the teaching style from teachers from other schools would be different. And honestly, I'm not even aware of how they teach. So our first concern was how they would be teaching, what the style would be. And secondly, if at all we decide to move, if things get better in December and January, and then we decide to choose the school on-campus learning, then how would these kids integrate into that system? The reason I'm asking is because my daughter, she did her TK and K at Design 39. Now she's going to first grade. And in some areas, she was already learning stuff from first grade in math and in reading. So now if we choose virtual learning, I don't think the teachers in virtual learning setup would work individually with the kids on their level of where they fall in terms of their skills. So I'll go with what Sai was saying, that I am just trying to understand, if we choose virtual learning, how this whole thing will work, and would the learning, the amount of learning would be less, what she would be learning would be less than what she has already learned, or be scaled down because she'll be in first grade and then she'll be repeating what she's learning, and the style of learning and how the kids will be integrated back into on campus once it becomes safe for them to go back.
So regarding the style of teaching, I know the district's going to be working with the teachers who are ultimately selected and working in the summer to do some type of community building, culture building, content creation, and that. So I don't know exactly, but I do have in the resources tab in the link here that if you click on that, you can kind of get a sense of what will be offered, a typical day in the life. So if you click on that, please take a look at that. And then reintegration of the students coming back into campus. I think that's one of the things Design 39 is continuing to evolve and get good at, is because every year we get over 10% of our students are new because they're coming from K, right, and TK in, and we're constantly having new students in. We're growing our campus from 1150 to almost 1300 kids next year. So we constantly have to figure out how to integrate new students into our campus. So I know our K3 teachers are doing a fabulous job of that, along with our 4-8. So I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but I would take a look at the resources from the district, what they've shared so far. I think we're going to close out here pretty soon, but I'm just looking at Casey.
So can I quickly mention something?
Oh, please.
In your post-session poll, do you mind modifying your options and also include homeschooling? I'm just curious what parents are thinking, and if you could have that option too, and then I would like to see the results of what parents are thinking.
Geez, you're making me work here and trying to do 3 things at once. Okay, let me try to do this. Christina asked the question, and I'm going to log in here and change the poll.
Okay, I have 2. Well, I think one I answered, but I thought the Zoom group might want to know. There were a lot of questions about, or not a lot, a few questions about grading. If you're in the Virtual Learning Academy, grading would be utilized through the Poway progress notes. If you're at Design 39, we'd be continuing with our learner profile and progress notes at 4.5 and the regular grading at 6.8, and grades are 6.12 for the Virtual Learning Academy. And then there was a question, is that correct, Joe? Did what I just say correct?
Yes.
Okay. Info on the number of COVID-19 deaths is based without presenting info on how many school-age children become infected and spread infection to adults at home. Can you present the data to make it unbiased?
Yeah, that data was given to me by Dr. Butler, and that was just presented. So we can have him on and kind of understand what data he knows and can share. So we can bring that up next time. All right, I'm fixing the question too. So yes, so look at the full, go ahead. I'm looking at a different screen, so I don't see that.
Yeah, just in continuation to what I was sharing earlier. Design 39 came out, it pivoted itself, and it came to a purpose, right? Instead of traditional schooling mechanism, it came out and it started some new mechanism here, new thinking process. In the same way, why can't we, I mean, I know you're trying to abide to what district is saying about virtual learning experience. It's going to be common. It's a bracketed for the whole district. Why can't we have our own distance learning thing? I know you already answered it, but I'm just thinking in the same thought process when the school was formed, why can't we have our own design distance learning process? Is it because of the resources that going to be a scaling issue? Or another hybrid approach could be you do the on-campus, but also enable some kind of video for those students who could just sign up for that option to join from home. Like parents like me, I'm okay. They might have less experience of what they will learn as a design 39, but at least they'll be part of that homeroom. They'll part of everything. All you're doing is just turn on the video and enable these students. And whatever the homeworks you push it to the kids who come on the school and also the kids who are joining online. And obviously I'm ready to take the risk as a parent for that reduced learning experience for my kids, but at least they'll still stay in the design 39 circle. Just sharing my thoughts.
You're even getting a thumbs up from Julie Morey here. I see here. She's thumbing you up here.
Because this basically raised from the fitness classes I attend. So there's a fitness class I signed up through my work. They've been doing on-site, but now they switched all to Zoom calls. It's going great. But now what they did is whatever the class that they do at the fitness class, it's also published to Zoom call. So people who wants to come on site are able to attend there. And also people who wants to stay home and do it, they're able to do it. Just sharing.
So I guess if I'm hearing you right, it sounds like a lot of folks are hesitant to the virtual learning necessarily because they don't know exactly what learning experience they get. If virtual learning was a Design 39 implemented experience, there'd be a lot of people with a thumbs up on that. And so the point of that is that's not my Joe decision, that's a district decision, but we can push on that idea.
Do you want to take that poll on that too? Just so you get
yeah. You could put that in the chat. So virtual learning at D39, what would that look like? Yeah. Let me push up the poll that was recommended and we'll go from there. Relaunch poll. Let's see if my poll goes right this time. It didn't go. Sorry. I thought I changed it. Oh, I did.
Hey, Joe, this is just a suggestion. Could we ask Milan to take this question to the district as well with regards to D39 organizing the virtual learning experience?
And I'm happy to do that as well. When you look at our data, I'll share our Padlet wall with our parents. How many times did that get voted up in different scenarios and different wordings of what people wanted to see? So I'll share that with district. So I pushed the question up, at school, virtual learning, homeschool, still deciding. Interesting, it's changed already, I could see.
I don't see the question pop up unless I'm missing something.
People are voting on it. You can just tell me publicly, what would you do?
Well, if there's a Design 39 virtual one, that's what
Yeah, I'm going to put that up in the next poll, and I need that data. So let me just close this one out so you guys can see this data. So share results. So it went up to 43% at school and down to 11%. Homeschool 8%, still deciding 38%.
I'm trying to count on the other one, but it's going to take me a minute.
Yeah, but if you just write those percentage points real quick, I'll take a screenshot. All right, let me change the quick poll. I'll just say virtual learning, district style, virtual learning at Design 39. I think I could kind of already get a sense of what that's going to be, but I'll just put it out there. Let me see if I can edit this thing. Learning on the fly here. All right, see what we got. All right, next one. Okay. You guys are so patient. I'm going to put in a teaser here. Let's see this, if this works too. All right, this looks fun. All right, here's the next one. All right, poll number 3. Let me see if we got here. Poll 3. All right, launching poll. It says virtual learning, PUSD Academy, the D39 Virtual Academy, or at Design 39 Campus. That was my teaser. So for all you patient YouTubers, we had over like almost 300 people on the YouTube channel, Christina.
Yeah, I feel like it.
I heard it was lag. Can I vote for 2? Julie, yes, you can vote for 2. Julie, knowing you, you can vote for all 3, Julie. Julie's my favorite. Big round of applause for Julie Maury, everybody.
That was your favorite.
Ah, you are, Christina. That's like my mom. You know, there's 10 of us kids, right? You guys know that, right? There's 5 boys, 5 girls in the Pelding family. And we always ask for who's mom's favorite. And she, oh, you're my favorite. And then she calls the next person, oh, you're my favorite son. So here's the results. Yeah, here's the results. So D39 virtual learning is 66%. At campus would be 32%. And having just a PUSD Academy, 2 votes at 2%. So there you have it.
Joe, when we finish, can you leave the YouTube station open so I can finish counting because it's moving and I can't.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to close it out here, friends. We already spent an hour and a half. Sorry for the person who might want to watch this thing again. All right, so you should have a link that was in the documents of the chat. Let me put everybody's beautiful faces back up. And again, you guys are amazing. Casey, any final thoughts? Milan, any final thoughts? We will do another one of these. We'll have some other resources prior to going. I was trying to look at the district. When is the district telling you guys you need to go and decide? They changed the date. 24th?
We get the
24th? Okay.
I think so.
So somewhere in there. All right. Thank you. All right. Looks like the 24th. So we'll have a date before then. It looks like 7 p.m. works fairly well. We had over 300 people gathering today. So you guys are amazing. Thanks for trusting us and for being together. We miss you very much and deeply. We hope you're enjoying time with your family. We went up to Big Bear. We did some jet skiing, doing a lot of walking. I got sunburnt, you could see. Forgot to wear the sunscreen. But most importantly, you know, like I shared, the greatest gift we can give our kids is an education. So we want to make sure that's done safely at the bottom line. All right, love you all very much.
Thank you, Joe and team. And I think I don't know how many schools and principals are doing this. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, I think it's about this many. It's okay. All right. We love them all. They're all working hard. They need to take a break as well. Okay, guys, we'll chat in probably another week and get some more information. And I'll pitch this idea that can there be some type of hybrid virtual learning at D39 and will they let us pilot something? We'll see. The answer is no right now, right? Unless we ask. So, all right, team, I'll stay on for 3 minutes just to kind of coordinate with Casey and Milan and Christina. But big round of applause, Christina, Casey, Milan, and team, and for all of our YouTubers out there. All right, we appreciate y'all. See you soon.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Is that you, Liz? Hey, Liz. Is that Jacqueline? Hey, Jamie. All right, Milan, you're in the dark there, brother. You stayed.
Yeah, I know.
Trooper.
I decided to do this outside when it's nice and sunny. And now I'm trying to do it in this little light I have out here.
This little light of mine.
Oh, the other thing Joe wanted to mention is that, you know, the district has that landing page for the reopening. So maybe that's a link that we can include in some of our documents that go out.
I put that on the resource page.
It is, okay, good.
On the right side.
I think that's constantly updated. So as questions come through, the district is updating that on a constant basis.
Perfect. Yeah, I can only imagine, right? When you're trying to navigate 37,000 different opinions on how this thing should go, when there's every 10 days, we're getting a different opinion from state and local authorities and changes in COVID cases. So, yeah.
And to your point, you know, all the healthcare or the health related questions, really, the district's just going to fall back on the county and the state guidelines. I mean,
yeah, they have to.
Yeah, the district can't make up their own guidelines when it comes to the issues. So how many cases does it take to quarantine a classroom? How many cases does it take to quarantine a school? Those are all going to be set by the county and the state.
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, healthcare, they're all learning too as we go, right? They're the best things we know to do is wash your hands and
wear a mask.
You know, if you're sick, quarantine yourself, I guess.
Just staying on to say thank you.
Hey, there you are, Big Cheese. Good to see you.
You guys
Thank
are
you,
awesome.
brother.
Appreciate
yeah,
you.
I know now you can give us really honest feedback, Sai. Now you didn't drink the Kool-Aid anymore, so no longer might.
Milan, before you leave, all the feedback on YouTube was if parents are choosing virtual, they want D39C virtual. There wasn't any other.
Yeah,
It was that or on campus, just for feedback.
Okay. Yeah, really interesting data, right? Because when you said, like, even on campus, they still kind of prefer an on-campus experience, but then when it's virtual learning design 39, it's like, woo, virtual learning at D39 has some data. Did you write that data down for me, Christina?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, they're not wrong. I mean, there will be a bridge if they choose virtual learning in the fall and come back to design 39 in spring. In
December, yeah.
There'll be a gap.
Right.
Not a learning.
Yeah.
The question with that, Joe, is I don't know how it applies to Design 39 because my kid's still a 5th grader, but for the middle school part of Design 39, I don't know if you guys are on a semester or a trimester system.
Semester.
Virtual learning is going to be semester for middle school and a 4x4 system for high schoolers.
High school, right? Yeah, we're semester for middle school.
So that will be so then there won't be any issues with transferring back and forth.
Yeah, I think middle school is going to be pretty aligned. They already kind of adapted to the way that we do even our.
Well, Oak Valley is its own trimester, so those, you know, there's going to be.
Oh, for that, yes,
with
yes,
CRFs
correct.
and whether they have course request forms they got to fill out again. So we're kind of fielding those kinds of details.
Yeah, the challenge with, as you know, being in the principal seat for whatever going on 6 years, is anything you start new takes about 3 years to even flesh out to make it any kind of viability. So to have a virtual learning experience and have it really come out the gate firing and have a culture that's connected, I mean, it's going to be super clunky. It's just the nature of design. And so you'll be pivoting and iterating and all this kind of stuff. And that's why parents are like, yeah, I don't know about that so much, but I know if Design 39 did it, they're going to have their own culture and their own methodology, and you can kind of really kind of like move into that. So yeah, I mean, bless the souls of the folks doing the virtual learning, because it's going to be, you know, we had the ecosystem of how many different communities coming to D39 and having to navigate that. Now you're going to have an ecosystem of all the other communities come together with all these other biases towards what you want to experience. It's going to be quite challenging. So I am not that principal. So.
I think, Joe, what will be a little telling is what percentage of D39 staff feel comfortable, like, or come back. Let's say 100% of them decide to come back to campus, then, you know, and 50% of the parents decide virtual learning, then what happens?
Yeah.
You know, like some of those scenarios are not played out yet, right? So.
Yeah, no, and that's so tricky, Sai, because, you know, it's that tension between the social emotional well-being of kids and the impact we know that it plays when you're not interacting with the other souls.
Right. All right. I'll let you be. Thank you again. You guys are awesome.
All right. Okie dokie.